Friends, Peter Zalma is with you today. Today, we have the best new Ukrainian journalist, publicist Vitaly Portnikov, by Vitaly Vitaev. I'm floating. Firm are today's issue, and are cool ones at the General Assembly. I passed in New York firm the rostrum of the General Assembly. The statements of light leaders were heard, richly of them held bilateral meetings on the sidelines of the podium. And one of such mouths of presidents in the presidency of Vladimir Zelensky and Donald Trump. And here is our post-column of Trump's statements. With a Ukrainian colleague, having written on his own, and having written accessible, not knowing and fully comprehending Russia. In an economical situation from Ukraine, having overcome economical problems, chain brings Russia. I think that Ukraine is fighting for the European Union, and bet all of Ukraine in Cobb form. Well, the whole claim became about her and Richly, who rested in Ukraine, but Trump's rhetoric. I'm going to jump on Polish Prime Minister Donald Tusk in these words, is not an optimistic angle about improving the US visibility. For ending the blame on Europe. The truth is more beautiful, they are illusions for respecting the head of the Polish row. Well, the third Zagoli for the sake of not Navaga on the claims of the Trump post, but it will change. And by 180 degrees. The torture of Pan Vitaly still bulged out all Trump's claims from Ukraine in the application, forgetting, overgrown in your fields. Well, Persia, I also respect the snake's rhetoric, its kind on filthy. The fact that Kola Trump made a similar statement and actually stated the position of the President of the Russian Federation Putin. We were now afraid of sending applications to the application shop, we also respected it in Ukraine. We respected it so that there would be no sanctions against the Russian Federation. And, although the statement is in principle about the fact that Visco can be pushed, at least look like a dump allegedly with Europeans. Moreover, I will guess even that very day the Sovereign Secretary, with the received in the staff of Marco Ruby, about the fact that with the receipt of the state, they can send a defensive attack on Tilky. For the guilt of the Russian Federation, this is an important moment. The coming moment is important for me. Inertia of the state apparatus. Are you a sovereign apparatus with the money received in the states? Peter, completely sharpened on Trump. Those people think in style about the interests of the received states. Discounts about Trump's interests are not allegedly a recipe from Posada. And here to reveal themselves to American officials. I'm spending the night. Trump is still in Ukraine. They don't need Nadava, so I will help our Ukraine. They need to embroider a test about the allocated pennies of our Ukraine. They need Shukadi, I will dump the products of Europe, and it is clear that Ukraine is a vein, and I feel I will lay them not careers. And Maybutney leaky words. So it can replace your point of view. The whole point of view, and will be served directly. And these people have discounts, and without looking, and not positions, they will drain Trump. So that's saying it from a point of view. Another moment. Important. I really will be tied up in Trump's head argument, both by the numb and the overeducated Europeans. That's not about Trump, the Europeans are batting about their Europeans, really need a report and energy on the cob. A handbook of Russia's hybrid guilt against the European edge. Europeans really need to think about flying Russian temples on windy forces, on windy cosmic ones. And fly into them not on windy Prost. The Europeans really need to help Ukraine and the American reset. Trump with Podavit, that Europe and Ukraine will be able to date the Russian Federation, and not changing the reset. Well, it would be extremely rich for me to grow hundreds of billions of American dollars to help Ukraine. And in such a form of hiring, It is not up to Ukraine to expose the Russian Federation, and the rock has come. And I have repeatedly said that the main task of Ukraine will stand up to the 2029 lesson about the political situation with the received states, the risk of changing our new elections. And it's clear that Putin wants both Trump and Biden. And in that, Yak and Trump. Trump spray and Putin, Trump not spray and Putin, and calling Russia a poor tiger. I am now presenting them at a session of the General Assembly. Another important point, tied to the rhetoric and Trump. It's also Trump himself. I respect even before us to talk about Putin's Saratovek nut like that. I do not know about Putin's chain discounts. And we are already today the Belarusian point man Lukashenko. Putin is ready to give Putin more about the positions of the summit in Alaska. Lukashenko himself is ready. You know, of course, that Lukashenko went to the Russian capital in a hurry. That Putin needs buckets of cotton wool for Trump's statements and to demonstrate his imperious constructiveness. And at the same time, to try the sunsets of Ukrainians to spend Ukraine on capitulation, I said the Belarusian Karmanik process. Well, here's the important point. Another important point in history is tied to the fact that I do not share the thoughts of those who respect Trump, simply repeating what he seemed to. I think Trump will notify the whole situation for Alaska. So seriously. But let's be realistic. There was a complete fiasco in Alaska, the American president. You mark Trump. I don't know. And Vin came out before the journalists, the two praises talked, saying the equipment and the equipment. It was clear that Putin had simply developed it elementary. And Trump wouldn't be Trump. I'm not naked yet to pretend everything is imperious for imperious. And literally for sprat years, oysters and with Putin, after repeating, high passes to Washington. High pass European leaders, he will not talk about all these speeches. Well, and extremely in the situation I am, we are perfectly of course. More has come to light. There was a smoke hovering, like rhetoric. In principle, everything is at the General Assembly. Oyster on oyster with Macron. Sa was not the only Zustrici, it was also a low Zustrici anti-Putin statements. The moment would be repeated and already in Anchorage. In Anchorage, Putin does not want the war to end. Add it to the fire if necessary. And for 3.5 hands, Russia can't earn anything. Clinging to the reputation and the Hromadians. I am an owl, and a duel and Putin. A moment and a moment. And exhaled torture. And why are you Trump Zagel requests from college in May in the received states? I haven't done anything easier, and maybe not with you. He needed to change the rhetoric to the one I could surrender to him accepted in this situation. That's it. The price signifying the situation is based, and yak bick I do not know. Yeah. Well, I would seems our colleague Tara's post, and writes that without getting up, it is known for Trump's metamorphoses. Even yesterday we are marking the one who showed all the guilt. Russia did not demand to be repaired. And Ukraine has rested all the guilt in Zagli, and it happened as we are marking. Well, conceiving Taras that Trump is gambling on the project itself, I am often given a bluff, and raising the stakes. To believe Trump will help Russia in the long term. It used to be so sure not to believe in the Polka 510 Rocky. Well, it is known and calling Russia a pop tiger. The Kremlin's reaction to Russia does not happen. But you can't explain why there can't be software. Well, I don't know. I think that it is possible, that it can be done by. Yes, here he is, but can we say that Trump is just trolling Russia? Well, and so on. But you can test Putin for what? But in the subject I am logic. We are not in Tilka's logic that she is in her applications. Propanovev Putin such monstrous moves. From his point of view, do you mark the knowledge of the Crimea with Russian? With the touch of sanctions. Tagging. Economical with Eurobit. Tagging. I will not turn from Russia to the energy market of Europe. He performed 3 times in Ranish. The low level of such control over those territories, Russia has already unfrozen Russian assets in Europe. In propane WAF. The envy of having to tell him Mr. President is a great idea. We occupy the wine, trade, and cut down the groves, save the Crimea. IPPR will be called by the Russian to the Americans, and will perform in the Crimea. Yak, everything is wonderful from Trump's point of view. Putin sent him. And now there is a special oyster in Alaska. And then Trump is dusty with Putin. And what are you doing in Zagoli normally? Then Biza propane and such monsters. You can't forget anything for 3.5 hands. I'm sure you wouldn't. I thought that you were already in Odessa, Kharkov, the Dnieper, and that your temples were already in Kiev. I'm going to propane. And talk about the war, but you wouldn't. You don't wake up anywhere, you just send your people in packs. You are looking for your economy, and as in a crowded Houston. You are on sanctions and what you do not add. I don't guess the literary plot for this. Kola billionaire, outstanding realtor comes to the fallen Zinka, as without getting up, the Rakovady clients pass through the studio. And torturing, and why don't you want to be friends on earth? I am, of course, that I am a rich married man, but all the bonuses, villas, lick the roads. You were in gold and in the choir. And nothing to Maya. Brudnaya apartment has nothing on the table. You take out and meet with the VH, and I propane and fine. Can you not explain? Why don't you want an earth bottle? Firm explain to me. Vladimir, Vladimir, Vladimir. Why don't you want an earth bottle? I'm rich, successful, I give you everything. You are not the court's decision and torture, I will close everything. After all, I'll give you all your pennies, you find in a pawn shop. Some mortgages are still the financial responsibility of their clients. For giving you pennies is not malicious. I don't understand. Well, he can't think so. Think about it, they are your ancient propositions. I'm terrorizing the whole block of Dernick. And I will also be the squad of such an old billionaire. Who else will know? Ticks are at balls, and we are not able to terrorize the quarter. And this is a complete civilizational misunderstanding. About all the plots are eliminated between Putin's trumps. The plot is not butchered kahana and unreasonable. Yes, and about what is rich before the speech of the Son. Yes, this is the process itself. You know that the axis can be printed out by the investigation of the George Soros Foundation in America. And the Justice Department and the American equivalent of the Ministry of Justice are also surrendered. The independence of Trump's cadence is a cadence, and it's just such an institution in which the orders of the president and the chain of the manual itself are unprecedented. And that's why Putin, who respects Trump, and a stitch in the hall of his betrothed under Vlad, to his political nobleman. Yak, it all started in Russia. Yeltsin disappeared, and the later Trotsky-Pan-Vitaly process of conspiracy. And even though I already know, at Trump's speech at a meeting of the UN General Assembly, and here the speech is remembered, we still cover up our styles. I will enlighten my promotion in the advertising of my own, not the president, but the UN itself, saying that the Crimea Europe through migrants emigration policy will kill the self-destruction of Europe, without saying Trump. Just saying that with beer to refugees from troubled Ukraine, and the quote, "We have not raised the problems in their Ukraine, and not the problems of our own." Well, let's go to those frequent promo Trump. Migration and the truth is one of the greatest calculations for Europe. And it's not rich in capturing politics in open cordons. This topic is relevant for us as well. It is rich who in Ukraine, for a prominent economy, we are for migrants. What do you think about Trump's words, and the light leaders are being honored by Palev, for populace, among the radical villagers? Well, we are, of course, a simple speech. Trump's real political views. That's it for him. And I want to tell you that in Persia, with such a neoconservative manifesto, there are protrusions in J. Devens. Allegedly sweeps at the Munich conference. And I will say buckets that I respect that the Republican Party from the states received into it. I have looked at it. To such an extent that the traditional conservatives have looked at the ultra-right people received in the states at the elections. And Trump is still in the scourge of the dimmed fields, simply not an American president. We can feel all these Trump statements on prices just at the address of Europe, the address of liberal political thought. We are with you and the tortures are set. And in Zagalip City, people vote for Trump. This is the name of traditional America. America was beating. It is flooded with electoral demographics. And this is also a good torture. On my mind, and what we are on demographic figures, 4, 5 to 10 Rocky, for the cadence of Trump and his successor. America will become Ukraine, and in Yaki the traditional warehouse, and a bill firm the population will be warehouses, let's say. People color shkir. What do you say about Hispano, and not allegedly Vrodibo with migration to the Hromadians from the received in the state of America? And, in principle, Donald Trump, he has not yet got the traditional one in the president, for which she unites with the far right. By the fact that I think Trump is disappointed in the African American Hispanics who voted for him. So I chose Peter. In America, they are simple. I'm on Trump's America. And the boss tries, and for those 5 to 10 Rocky, becomes a dictatorship in America, and America in 5 to 10 Rocky becomes a classic Latin American power. And food for Ukraine, and beer America, and traditional, I said, American and those. And all the principles and garlic and manners of a political duel. I'm like Ukraine. Canada. But I'm not going to make her a 50-foot staff yet, am I? It's not going to be a 50-foot state, it's going to be a museum with an in-state museum in America. Yes, Vitaly Portnikov, you said this is a typical Latin American Ukraine. I thought banana republic, banana. It can also be on a banana republic. There will be such a Ukraine to Brazil. It's just that with this type of president I'm to Lula Ignacio da Silva. I'm not a victim. I think that Maybutny mayor of New York, Ken and Pan Mamda. Maybutnik with received in the state. It's really not Trump, but the politician of America. That's what we are, yes, we are with a new extreme. I go to the ultra-right. I'll tell you about the fact that they are restored in America. And America has two choices. And there will come a beer African republic and apartheid, a moron less than Kontrolev, and all the gentry, who legislated the order of Pedro electoral procedures. And I respect the overgrown, Donald Trump Namagatsiya then Ukraine and the Gates. And save democracy of the Latin American type simply because, well, I'm not in the PV of African democracy. Democracy. And absolutely specifically of the African type. Ramaphosa, of course, is not Frederick de Klerk. Modes. At Bidov, democracy was being cleaned up in the mines. It was just apartheid democracy, but a fundamentally national democracy. There I am absolutely specific with a specific political culture. Such a bill of American with the received states. In the Nabshim Maybutnam Trump with a sample 4-3 and passed 4-3 Pridful Pokey. So we are at the university. We say goodbye to the wall of America, as we know, and the authoritarian power beat apartheid. And the democratic power of the Latin American type. Well, I'm just coldly analyzing. I am not that America of Kabul, it is dying demographically, not politically, demographically. And on the PN, the Americans beat the seemingly traditional ones, and there she was. About what? To the fact that migration continued, and it has already become the incha of migration. Guess what migration in America looked like on the cob of the 20th Russian Empire, the Jews of the Russian Empire, right? And you had an honest Jewish community. Ireland. Italy, not Mekina. And the British Isles of emigration. Let's submit, like a migration, with the receipt of a staff of 20%. Mexico, the Dominican Republic, Haiti, the African Ukraine, Iran, India, China, these are absolutely migration flows. And Vaughan also changed the customs of Donna's traditional America in business. And I can. And that's Donald Trump. I'm not just bashing in on the topic of tragedy, I just adore the hours of traditional America are completed before the speech. It is possible to complete it, and the hours of traditional Europe, and Ukrainians live in the light, in which people do not want them, and are still against it from the cob poor. And on the topic of military for, I would say Europe has passed, and I will not be such a Europe. You're doing a great job. I was looking out for Poland 10 or 15 rocky years ago. She doesn't look like that in front of us in these places. So, and what will go to the Polish province, you will visit traditional Poland there. So you and the American globes beat traditional America. One surface of Poland and one surface of America will be in the museum for a long time. And their own and the economic potribs look like this, the European peoples of the SP. You are honest, demographic problems are practical for everyone. Ukrainians and demographic problems have accelerated just at the lime ring. And in principle, all the peoples of Europe are not entering into a blissful secondary process, there will be nothing for it. We are with you on the way to the people. I live with both the people and the contagious on the ethnographic map of the suite. But they are not Maya. And extremely we, the Colis, lived in an absolutely demographic situation. We beat ancient Egyptians, ancient Romans, ancient Hellenes, Dacians, whoever he wants. At a time, we meet with our friends around the planet in ethnographic museums. So is civilization. Yaks are ancient peoples, it's not easy, and there are few of them. I will change the nations. At a time, we are just the process itself, from what is in weight in Europe, in beer America. We can already say goodbye to R and Suzids, and say goodbye to the 18th, 19th, 20th intelligently. God's wife Maya, Daki, Shebel, so Madame History, and no one else. I still have you in the fineness of people and economical potrebi. Then the scene will not change. Listen up. Solve the Turkish VU and squares in Nemechina without any migration influx. With Freiburg in the central place square, crowded with Turkish shop and agent. And it became what was needed to be seen in the German economy. It turned out that there were simply no German people. And they looked at the front. So the Turkish Hromada appeared in naught. I replaced between us the seeming self-importance and role with a holocaust. The Jewish community. Choke on President Recep and Erdogan on the Kurds. The process is not easy. I would say, like the rubbing of the Turkish nation to the Kursk ethnos and the Kurdish problem. And who was replaced by the Kurds in those lands where they live politically? Extremely. We are passing through places on tour, in Yaku Umno Adana, where there were 8,300 on the Elephant and Vermensky today. And we know what? We know it was still in the 1915th kind. In faith, respect the genocide in faith, and on the tick in faith. In Yakum at a time lived Turkish, Kursk nigh, and there was a Tesh place, and on ticks in clicks. And yet you still displace the price of meaning this problem. You're putting all the problems together. For a long hour Poland was a mononational power. We did not tick once. I asked my Polish friends the torment. And the yak Polish people primates, the new pretense of Poland to be a power is richly national, even in Europe. And then, the wait for Russian-Ukrainian guilt, and discounts Ukrainians in 1 million in Poland. Well, less than 2 are overstated, and so 2 million. Well, these people will be the people and sit. They will get up and be Catholic and of course, and maybe a Greek Catholic Orthodox. And he can speak both the Polish mu, and the Ukrainians of pre-war Poland spoke Polish inflating with Ukrainians. Poland will turn on the sofa to the SP to the military, dragging with the mind will turn out to be an Indian, Czech migrant substrate. How can the Polish ultra-right change this situation? You can't. You can't vote, you can't praise the laws. And the one. And you get rid of democracy, and you pretend to be everything to Ukraine from an ethnographic, demographic point of view. And I think that you are getting rid of democracy with the knowledge of the alleged economy. There you will also expel all these people from the press. You have a chain to collapse. And you and those they will think, and I will replace the workforce. The ultra-right, when speaking at rest, I do not fight. A single chance for the ultra-right with breed of lad is not a recipe for Donald Trump, a recipe for Adolf Hitler. And Trump did not fight Hitler. Vitaly, well, no less in the Hromadian fault, it would not have already been announced, yes. The sale of the activist Charlie Donald Trump, I write Isham Shlyak on the Biden's Vidman Obama in such attacks, and Edna Ukraine. Just at first, here is the axis of our gates, and I'm not on them. So I'll tell you everything, Peter. Donald Trump has no choice. Barack Obama and Joseph Biden, can you be a nobleman? Not that you can't unite intelligently. But America is frequent, and Trump does not have such chances. I am saving democratizing America. And there are hundreds of those political processes in the whole country. Discounts are still possible, and up to the river on the Riviera, so the dawn of Trump disappeared early such Putin's Russia. Who's watch Yeltsin, and on the Riviera? It's not possible on the river, you know what? Skin American Maya Rushny, and Rushny, being on stage, can shoot, and these are the moments. And the Russians had been dropped. Hromadian guilt and schism, and this is the city prophecy itself. Patrushev. The reactive moment is that people may be afraid, and there will be no solutions, and the layout will be shot. And in Russia, there were no such problems. There is also a monopoly on harness in Russia. The monopoly on the harness of the Federal Service of the Russian Federation. The Ministry of Defense of the Russian Federation and criminal kill Pivrobitnichat with the Russian Special Services. And those people have a monopoly on dumping, and the Russians are simply fed up with Vlad's decision that they can be shot. And in America it is. American Vlad will have income up to the moment. I can have the Pochet dropped by the Povston, and all this is perfectly understandable. And Donald Trump, and Charlie Kirky, J. Devens in the Shire, with the right to reset. And on the truth from a logical point of view, their task, I'm in the form of a brother of a kind of reset, and they don't take it off America for an act. Because such an America can be given a monopoly on dumping with Tilka. Putin's Shlyak is right for Trump. But he wants to be a Shlyak. Well, and you know again, that absolutely those who in May in the dump of their people firm their side. Rich New York. New York in these places Democrat blue, yes, richly shed. I'm like that. Well then. America. Well, averse. I think prices are a problem. There is still a right to reset, so it is not possible to exercise the right. You've seen Shvidka before Soros, but you still know that there is still a moment. The self-serving target started with his highest beneficiary, then Viktor Orban, having won scholarships and grants from Soros. And on his savor to the apostolic stage, often in his closing his mortgages, and the university in Budapest closing. Well, it is known that Putin is such a Voroga of Medea and Trump. And you know, the fact that, well, I respect absolutely unprofitable in Ukraine. It's so possible to feel rich and politicians and just on Facebook, such hatred, it's just like that, you know, absolutely. Irrational. In Ukraine. In Ukraine, the conservative right is often on the non-understanding lines. Krok and Potem Shliahu I Krok, and in the grave of Ukraine. The fact that Ukraine, I am already on a one-time belt, and again turned off in a democratic light, in a right-wing conservative light. In Ukraine, Tilky is in the grave of the Nazi occupation of Ukraine, in a left conservative radical light. In Ukraine, the same Tilka in the grave, as we know, is according to the Radian Union. Ukraine and Tilky again, in a democratic light. In the light of right-wing populace and wholly populace, no one needs it. And those Ukrainians of the right populist look are simply engaged in the fact that they are digging the grave of the powerful people. I know for sure. It wasn't me who poured them in, maybe even a right-wing conservative, a silent radical. I'm just the fact that Ukraine itself, and the Ukrainian people, are so furnished for secondary. Not my chances. You can clearly become a right-wing conservative, a silent radical, but you need to take the Russian identity, the Russian hromadyanstvo. Russia can be a right-wing conservative, a Rhone conservative power, a Rhone radical power to the Russian people, and without loading. I still Russians stand up to the fascists, and they will not load anything. I'm still Russians get up as communists, and they can't get anything loaded. Out, and the Russians are overestimated by the Doin Union, and about Putin's Russia. The Russian people don't need anything. My right to experiment. So, Windigraduya. Blame Stalin's frequent visits and Putin's frequent visits, reading Putin's verses about the scientist cat who walks around. And Ukraine will not. Pushkin's version is not Putin's. I said Pushkin. Putin I said. You said Putin, yes, well that. Vershi Pushkin, yes, Alexander Sergeyevich about the gut. And the Ukrainians have recently been injected with juices, I do not know what it is for. And the oak. The Ukrainians will not ride the oak tree for a while. Well, after all, there is another topic of the General Assembly. And it was wrapped up at the Vaga. I keep the status of Sprat, Ukraine, Britain, Canada, Australia, Belgium, this is France. At the General Assembly, he officially declared that the Palestinian power will still be recognized. About us to develop their niche leaders. Such an initiative is a display of risk, a cover to Israel from the side, and, after all, the opposition from the side of the United States to such risks. According to Vitaly of Ukraine, will Palestine be recognized among the members of the Rada on your Kuzmin Dumka? I am a Hromadyan of Ukraine. I have been a Palestinian power for 34 years. And according to the huge power, I recognized the Palestinian power and gave out the organization of the evocation of Palestine. I am a representative of the Palestinian people to fit in. I'm all at the university with a Palestinian, and the fact that the Radin Union, having recognized the power of Palestine, and the organization called Palestine, it's symbolic, doesn't it matter that you can't provide it practical, and not because you know how you slaughter knowledge. Knowledge of the Ukrainian People's Union. The fact that there were not many minds there. Moscow, Kiev simply recognized the Palestinian power. And here in the chair, the Palestinian power will be recognized without Hamas. The fact that the Mayan Palestinian power recognizes Israel's right to a foundation. And from Mahmoud bis to the Palestinian Authority, you know Israel's right to a foundation. And the problem is that the Palestinian one is about the elections on the western side in the Gaza Strip. In those elections, that power I am ridding Israel of the government on the grounds. So was the donkey's persuasion. For that and to please, there is Rafat, the leader of Fatah, and Pershi, the head of the Palestinian National Authority. Having given Israel the right to the foundations in fact, both the pro and the fat party lost the election. Pershishval elections, stalemate losing to Hamas throughout the Palestinian Authority. We like to talk about the Gaza Strip, but we lost in the West. On the Palestinian Parliament and Kola, you decided to usurp Vlad. I want to tell you about Ismail Khan, the former Prime Minister of the Palestinian Authority, who won the elections. A Hamas fan for a long time in the life of Israelis and in Iran. Officially, the people's removed Prime Minister in Israel is the Council for Getting Up. And I still have you holding elections at a time, you are the very situation. I am still the leaders of Hamas, Raptum call, the right of Israel to the ground, in those elections the party is supposedly right. She's in line, and I'm your guarantor. And I have such a party, the Palestinian Authority, we still sound like Jews. With Israel gas. Simple Gasta, for Palestinian elections. Those people. What do we know about the Palestinian power, and the Mayan power? You know Israel's right to the foundation. And Propanuatia, to the Palestinian people, do not elect. To the fact that the adoration of the Palestinian people is a Palestinian power without Israel, and not with Israel. And the type of Palestinian politicians, and you are in favor of this option and its interests. From the point of view of extremely we can find what I know them myself. You are in good bags with him. And a man who respects Israel and Palestine can be a better one. I am such people. I'm in Israel, I'm for a conversation on May 3, two powers and I showed you the same thing in Israel. And I want you to do anything. Israelis. The Palestinian national collapse was a revolt and a terrorist act. What about the fact that his leader was notified by another position, pretending to be kicked out by the imperious? And until that hour, I will not be with Israel. I will not be a supposedly Palestinian power. That's the whole story of knowledge with you. On the power you are from getting the state of America, because it can't get into the sheets. There is a chip attached to the heads of the Palestinians. Yak, no one can get into the sheets into the heads of the Russians. And Ukraine can still do them again. Another Ukrainian land on their land. And until the moment when there is a terrible and cruel Russian-Ukrainian guilt in the head of the Russians. Tix laid out the economical potential of Russia. Putin's fault, and the Russians' fault is exactly the same as the fault against Israel, the fault of Hamas, and even before that hour. We will be in the light of absolutely bizarre ideas, and we are still cutting our hair, maybe for objective reasons, to complete what the peoples are doing. I want the peoples to stop going to those territories again. They will not give up, they will not reach their body. They can also be tilted by the fact that we have put up barriers, we have laid out the economical potential of Putin's Hamas. And they will still pass according to your soul. More Ukrainian, more Jewish. That's it.